Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's. It could be the last of the season. It could be the first of a long college football playoff run. Regardless, it's Tim May, the 41-year vet. It's Spencer Holbrook, and it is Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's. You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Because Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you have come to love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or the real heat seekers. They know to try. The ball knowers, they try spicy ghost pepper, only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare you to go try them right now, Tim. That's seven delicious ways. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before for a whole new way to nug. It's got to be Wendy's, a participating U.S. Wendy's. Tim, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to peel back the curtain because it's college football playoff time, and that's what we do here. We're authentic. We're real.
Wait a minute. Let me throw something out there. You know, a few Christmases ago, the hottest thing on the Christmas list was Uggs. Now the hottest thing on the Christmas list is Wendy's Nugs. Now go ahead.
I love that. There you go, Tim. That's the first time I've done that ad read.
Especially for the ghost pepper with the ghost pepper sauce on them.
That's the first time I've done that ad read and didn't have to read it. So I'm going to wake up in like 30 years from a coma, and I'm just going to be saying that ad read. But it's going to be like, give me some Wendy's saucy nugs.
Ghost sauce.
Yeah, no kidding. Spicy ghost pepper, please. All right, let's talk. There's Ohio State fans in the comments. There's Tennessee fans in the comments already. I see you guys. I read these things, but that's fun. That's what we're here for. It's Lettermen Live. It's presented by Wendy's. It's Tim May. It's Spencer Holbrook. Tim, how you feeling? And we're 52 hours from kickoff. How you feeling?
Got most of my Christmas shopping done. Feeling pretty good about that. Okay. As far as the game, I don't know how to explain to people that in our business, you don't really root for one team or the other, although it is more fun to cover a team that goes deep into the playoffs. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
But, I've been saying this all along. Tennessee and Ohio State look like almost the same team to me in terms of their results this year. Tennessee getting beat by Georgia, which is the number 2 seed in this tournament. Ohio State getting beat by 1 point at Oregon, by Oregon at Oregon, which is the number 1 seed in this tournament. They both played really good defense for most of the season, and they both at times left you wondering what is their offense all about. And I mean both teams, and so that's what's interesting about this game. Will the real Ohio State finally step forward? We all know about all the players that returned at Ohio State, the ones that came in. I mean, we just, as we found out today, Caleb Downs and Seth McLaughlin, the injured Seth McLaughlin, whose season ended in practice between the Northwestern game and the Indiana game with a torn Achilles. But both of them have been deemed consensus All-Americans by Ohio State. And we all know that this time a year ago, they were starting for Alabama. So the transfer portal has been very good to Ohio State, including his starting quarterback, one of his big-time running backs, and Quinshon Judkins right on down the line. And, with Tennessee, we've seen the rise. I wouldn't call it a fast rise, but a steady rise of a freshman quarterback. What's his name again, Spence?
Nico Iamaleava.
There you go. That was easy for you to say. But the more you looked at Tennessee through the season, you saw not totally one-dimensional, but leaning toward one-dimensional in terms of leaning much more heavily on its run game with Sampson than his passing game with Iamaleava, and his wide receiver core has been banged up, especially after the last couple of games. So we'll see who actually plays a lot for Tennessee in that regard. I guess my point is I see two teams that are very similar. And it's a moment for either one of them to make maybe a bold statement and step deeper into the college football playoff for the first time ever, a 12-team affair.
Yeah, Vols fan 98 makes a good point here. They each have a good loss. They each have a bad loss. This is fun because Ohio State lost to the number 1 team in the country, the number 1 seed in this tournament. Tennessee lost to the number 2 seed in this tournament. Ohio State lost to a 7-5 Michigan team that barely made a bowl game. Tennessee lost to a 6-6 Arkansas team that barely made a bowl game. And then they both have pretty good wins. Tennessee has a win over Alabama as kind of the main win it hangs its hat on. Ohio State has 2 wins it can hang its hat on, depending on how your feelings on 11-1 Indiana. They beat a Penn State team on the road at Penn State, then they beat Indiana. Again, depending on your feelings on Indiana, both these teams are, Tim, they're just so similar. They do a lot of things the same. I think Ohio State probably has more top-end talent. That doesn't really mean anything in a game like this. But
if it did, it would have mattered 2 weeks ago when they played Michigan. So go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have mattered when Tennessee played Arkansas and when Ohio State played Oregon, because Ohio State's more, I think, top to bottom, 1 to 85, more talented there. Like, so it's just interesting. Like, I think SMU Penn State's cool. I think that's fine. It's a good first-round college football playoff matchup. It's one that we'll probably come to expect, a game like that. Indiana, Notre Dame, kind of the same thing. It's one you expect. Texas, Clemson, and Ohio State, Tennessee are kind of those, those are teams that have like serious, hardware in the trophy cases in their buildings.
Blue blood. I think the word you're looking for is blue bloods.
Yeah, but I think Notre Dame is a blue blood. But 21st century, I'm talking 21st century hardware is in the trophy.
Occasionally they're green bloods, but go ahead.
Yeah, for like Ohio State, for Tennessee, for Texas, for Clemson, like these are programs that win. And to get these matchups, and then to also dive deeper here and to get a matchup between two teams, Tennessee and Ohio State, that are just so similar. I just think it's fascinating. It's awesome. It's great for the sport. It's great for Ohio State. It's great for Tennessee. And it's going to be a really cool atmosphere on Saturday night. That's what I want to start with, Tim. We won't spend too much time on it. Much has been made about all of this all week. Who's buying tickets? Who's not buying tickets? Who's selling tickets? Who's going to be sitting where? How much orange are we going to see? It doesn't really matter. It's going to be a majority Ohio State crowd. But what are you expecting atmosphere-wise? Not just crowd, but just atmosphere-wise. The tailgating, the pregame, everything, the build-up. I just think back to that Ohio State Notre Dame game to kick off the 2022 season and the all-day build-up to that event. And it felt more like an event than a football game. And I think this is going to have the same undertones of this is a major, not cultural event. It's not the Oscars, but like a major event more than it is just a football game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Tennessee and Ohio State only played one other time, and that was the 1996 Citrus Bowl after the 95 season. And Peyton Manning was playing for Tennessee then, and Heisman Trophy winner, eventual Heisman Trophy winner. Oh, no, he had already won it. Excuse me. Eddie George was playing for Ohio State. He didn't opt out. He played in the bowl game before moving on, becoming a first-round draft pick of the Houston, now Tennessee Titans. Houston Oilers, now Tennessee Titans. But I digress. Tennessee won that game. It was known as Cleat Gate for Tennessee, wearing 17 or 19 of his players wearing cleats that were too long to get a better grip in the really slippery, muddy conditions because of a big all-day rain there in Orlando. So that's the history. Also, I learned the words to Rocky Top the hard way in that game because I think the Tennessee band played it 4,000 times unprovoked and unsolicited on my part. But it's just as blue blood as these programs are. And I mean, I've known about Tennessee football forever because I grew up in Alabama. I was an Alabama fan. I remember Bill Battle and his team breaking Alabama's win streak at one point in the mid 60s and stuff, just right on down the line. I've known about General Neyland and all that stuff forever. And so these two teams should have met a lot more than this just being their second time. And this one's kind of being forced on both of them. It was interesting to me. I don't know about you, Spence, but how the College Football Playoff Committee pretty much attached these guys at the hip, Tennessee or Ohio State and Tennessee in that order the last couple of weeks of the committee rankings. And so if they had been 7 and 8, as probably they should have been when you think about some things. If they'd been 7 and 8, they wouldn't be playing, but They were 8 and 9. So that just was over the overlap and they end up playing each other. And it promises to be very interesting because forever, you've heard Northern fans say, man, I wish I could get one of those Southern schools, one of those SEC schools is what they mean up north, when it's cold and stuff. And well, here you go. You got your wish. First day of winter in 2024. And here's Ohio State hosting Tennessee temperature's supposed to be in the low 20s, mid 20s at kickoff, maybe lower than that, and going down into the teens as the game progresses. That's not good for either team. I'm not, I wouldn't be touting that anybody has an edge in that, even the fans, especially the fans. So getting back to what you're saying, it will be interesting because, as you've pointed out, the ticket market, although some of the online sites are still touting that this is the second hardest ticket or second priciest ticket on average to get on Saturday. The priciest is Indiana and Notre Dame, but we've noticed that the trend has actually gone down in price over the last several days. Which does that mean everybody from Tennessee who's going or coming already has their ticket? Does that mean that some people who bought tickets kind of messed up, thinking there'd be a demand that pretty much hasn't panned out? I guess we're going to see about 5 minutes before kickoff on Saturday night. But I still expect an incredibly strong, vociferous Ohio State home field advantage in this one. Don't you?
Yeah, I do. Just one quick thing. These two teams should have met in the 98 national championship game. The first ever BCS national championship game. They should have met in that game. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, they should have played, but they didn't because Ohio State lost to Michigan State and then beat Michigan and didn't get to play for the national championship. So
they still should have played.
I know they should have played. It should have been 1 versus 2 out in Tempe. It should have been the national championship. And what would we be?
I told you I sat next to Peerless Price, by the way, on the plane ride because Ohio State played Texas A&M in the Sugar Bowl, and I sat next to Peerless Price on the connecting plane ride from Columbus to St. Louis, where he kept on going to Tempe, and I flew down to New Orleans. But he was all geeked then, man. He's from the Dayton area, and ended up being, I think he ended up being the MVP of that BCS championship game. If not, he still played a huge role in it. Wide receiver, the Ohio State kind of didn't want enough, So there's history between these teams just in the recruiting ranks.
There certainly is. And then, you stretch it all the way to David Sanders, who Ohio State and Tennessee just went toe-to-toe for. Tennessee comes out on top in that one. We'll see what happens in the Horseshoe on Saturday. I think regardless, this is going to be, with Tennessee fans in droves coming up I-71, making their way through Grove City and then into Columbus this weekend. And
you gave that route. Are you selling lemonade on the side of the road there?
I might as well.
Grove City?
I might as well.
It's going to freeze, baby.
Yeah. Do vol calls from the Wendy's here in Grove City.
Go. I bet a lot of that ghost pepper sauce.
Yeah, I know. No, but between Tennessee fans making their way up north and Ohio State fans just being Ohio State fans, I think the best word for the Horseshoe for Saturday night is the word supercharged. I think it is going to be just a supercharged atmosphere, and it's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting there. Well, let's get to what's going to happen on the field, though, Tim, because that's what we're here for. It's a preview. It's key matchups. It's Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's. You guys know the drill. We're gonna drill down here with some key matchups. What's one matchup here between Ohio State and Tennessee that you really have your eye on, like that? And let's take offensive line versus Tennessee defensive line out of the way because we've talked about that. I mean, have we had enough, Tim, of the offensive line talk at this point? It's like put the ball. Yeah.
But
what's that matchup other than that's got your eye that it's catching your eye that's going to determine what's going on here?
The quarterback for Tennessee, whose name is
what's his name? Nico Iamaleava.
Okay, I'm just going to let you pronounce it for me. Nico Iamaleava.
There you go.
Nico Iamaleava. I'm usually pretty good at that. Like I said, I picked up on Tui Molowau like that. That to me is basically him against Jim Knowles, for want of another way of putting it. But he's still a redshirt freshman quarterback, making this will be his 13th start, I think. I'm not sure whether he missed I'm trying to remember if he missed a start in the regular season. But anyway, I should have that in front of me, but I'm too busy just talking. How Jim Knowles will try to mess with Nico Iamaleava, both physically and mentally, but especially mentally, because Mark D'Antonio is the first defense coordinator I ever heard use the term "affect the quarterback," which means get after him both this way and hitting him. And, the Ohio State defensive front has got a kind of a two-fingered approach it's got to deal with, because it's got to stop Sampson. It's got to neutralize Sampson in the running game. And we saw them do that this year against a really good running back, Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who finally scored in the late going against Ohio State's second and third team defensive players. But otherwise, he was a non-factor. And so the Ohio State point defensively is to try to make Sampson a non-factor, or don't let him have his regular game, right? Don't let him beat you. And fresh in their heads is Mullings, that 27-yard run by Mullings, running back from Michigan, which kind of saved the day and got them down into field goal territory on that last drive and set up the game-winning field goal. Just when you thought they had him corralled, he got out. There's like three guys that should have made the tackle on that play but didn't. So, but the bottom line is you've got to, for want of another term, force Tennessee into making their redshirt freshman quarterback have to beat you throwing the ball. But that's part and parcel to every game you play, right? Make the quarterback have to beat you throwing it. And now we'll see, because like we talked about earlier, Tennessee's wide receiver course has been pretty banged up recently, and they may be without one or two guys again on Saturday night, or at least limited. So that to me is the matchup: is can you make the redshirt freshman quarterback beat you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what Ohio State's game plan is going to be. We don't know, because we're not privy to those conversations, but you see a quarterback who, and I talk about this a little bit on Bold Predictions on Friday. It's pre-recorded a little bit, but you see a little bit of that in Nico's game, where when you make him stand tall in the pocket and deliver with pressure in his face, there are some turnovers there against the better teams on the schedule.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen if Dylan Sampson's getting 6 yards a carry, 7 yards a carry, 8 yards a pop. So I just think that it has to be the game plan for Ohio State. The recipe to win, the Jim Tressel plan to win, has got to be stopping the run here. And if Nico Iamaleava becomes the superstar that he's being paid to be, because remember, he's the one who all of that NIL consternation was about. And I'm not saying he didn't earn that money or he doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying, if he becomes the superstar quarterback that he's paid to be on the road in 10-degree temperatures, in the cold at Ohio Stadium, in the college football playoff, if a star is born on the field, you almost are saying okay, Nico beat us, and we got beat by a quarterback who just came alive. And, maybe that catapults him to ridiculously special things for his career. We haven't seen that. We've seen it in throws. We have not seen it in games. And so if I'm Jim Knowles, I'm making that come to fruition. And if it doesn't come to fruition, Ohio State will win the game. Because I'm not getting beaten by the best player on the offense. And the best player on the offense is Dylan Sampson. Take away the best player, make them throw down the field in the cold with a guy from Southern California who's never played in this cold of temperatures before. I don't think the cold affects the game. I think the cold can affect individual players. And I wonder what Nico's going to do in the cold. I think this is, Tim, great point on the matchups. You have to make Nico beat you. Do not let Dylan Sampson beat you.
Yeah, now, flip side of that is Nico runs pretty well. Matter of fact, he runs real well.
Yeah.
We've seen Ohio State. I mean, they pretty much they absorb some big plays from Oregon. But the play that really finally beat them, in my opinion, was the 27-yard, whatever it was, touchdown run by Dylan Gabriel, which he didn't run very much in that game, but he was effective when he did run, got a couple of key first downs, but also got a huge touchdown. Any touchdown is huge in a game that ends up 32-31. So, that's the thing that Nico brings to the table that Ohio State has shown some problems of losing track. I mean, look at Northwestern, got their lone touchdown from their quarterback in that game in Wrigley Field. And, for a while there, Ohio State really didn't know what to do with that kid. Then they finally figured it out, and they had their come from behind victory. From behind victory against Northwestern. but yeah, that's the thing that he presents also. Yeah, he's got one of the strongest arms you've seen, but he can run and beat you too. And it's just those little death by 1,000 cuts by a quarterback scrambling for 8, 10, 12 yards, just when you got everything else covered, that really can come back to haunt you. So that's what Tennessee has going for it in this game. It's and of course its offense is interesting with as we've talked about ad nauseum, their up tempo game. But like we talked about on a podcast you and I did earlier, the way you maybe neutralize that is get off the field in 3 plays, right, defensively. And as we've seen, Ohio State occasionally has had trouble doing that. So that'll be the other challenge for the Ohio State defense. And that's where Nico will figure in heavily, a little scramble on 3rd down to keep things going and keep players on the field, meaning Ohio State's players, the same ones, instead of letting them necessarily substitute on the defensive front occasionally when they're getting a little bit winded. And we saw Ohio State go with a lineup on the defensive front against Michigan, especially in that 4th quarter, and I think it took its toll. So that'll definitely be one of Tennessee's missions.
Yeah, it certainly will be. I'm going to forward the conversation here. My next matchup to watch is Will Howard against himself. And I'm not saying that as like a joke. I'm not saying that as a joke, but like Will Howard
sounds like it.
Here's the thing. Will Howard has about 1 throw a game where it's like, what are you doing? He's also an almost 80% passer for Ohio State this season. Like, he's set records for how accurate and efficient he's been in the passing game.
Yeah.
The Michigan game, I thought Will Howard beat himself. He had a miscommunication with Emeka Buka. We haven't seen that all year. He had another throw where it just wasn't a good throw, and he set up a Michigan touchdown on the 2-yard line. They didn't really give him many opportunities or put him in position to be successful. Otherwise, he calls himself the run game coordinator on the field, and he's obviously the field general for the passing game. If he plays well and doesn't make mistakes, with him for himself, he's going to play really, really well in this game. Tennessee can be gotten on the outside. They have a really, really good corner, Jamon McCoy. I think he's one of the best corners in college football. I think he'd look great in black and gold at the next level. But right now, he's the best player in the Tennessee secondary. Other than that, I think Tennessee secondary is they're not bad by any means. I think they're good. They're not great. So if Will Howard is on point in this game, there's not a lot of guys who are going to stop these receivers. So it's on Will Howard to get them the ball. The coaching staff for the last few weeks, Tim, now has said, we need to put these guys in the best position to win the game. I think that this staff will put these guys in a good position to win this game, and then it's on them to go execute. Because at some point, it's about the players on the field. And I think Will Howard, if he's dialed in, if he's having a good day, you're going to see Ohio State move the ball really well on this Tennessee defense. And when Tennessee has to get back and defend the pass, I think that's when Ohio State can try to run the football. And so it all depends on what Will Howard does with the ball. And so I'm going to say that it's Will Howard against himself. I think if he plays well, Ohio State's going to win. And if he doesn't play well, then Ohio State's probably going to lose this game.
Well, yeah, that's why I picked him as the possible offensive player of the game, because if they do win, it will be part and parcel. Most of the weight will be on Will Howard's shoulders. And but that's just football because he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
With McCoy, like you're talking about, you're looking forward to seeing some matchups like against Jeremiah Smith, or does Ohio State force the lineups and make him cover Carnell Tate? How are they going to get those matchups is going to be what's interesting. The Emeka Egbuka, like we talked about earlier in the week, getting players catching passes on the run, not standing still, but on the run could be key in this game. And I think Tennessee's defensive front as a group is as talented as Michigan's. And that was a very good defensive front, but it was sort of like top heavy from the Mason Graham's point of view, who I think is the best defensive tackle in college football this year. I like Tennessee's defensive front across the board in terms of the way they play, and they have some decent depth in there too. So, we're going to see Luke Montgomery possibly making his first start at one of the guard spots for Ohio State. You think it might be right guard. I think it's probably going to be left guard, but we'll see. But that's if there was another term, shakeup on the Ohio State offensive front since the Michigan game, when it brought pickaxes and battering rams to the battle and couldn't break through Michigan's stone wall front, which was, after about 8 or 10 times, it got kind of embarrassing for them. I would think that that's going to be the first test you're going to see. Because, here's the thing that people misunderstand. And I wrote about this after that game, like a lot of people did. I faulted Ohio State, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, not for trying to run the ball between the tackles, but for, after it was obvious they weren't going to be able to, insisting like 8 or 9 other times to try to do it. That was my fault with them. Those could have been at least 6 or 7 more passes and maybe another kind of a running play. But, when you don't get 100 yards rushing, you've had a bad day, no matter what team you are in college football. And so that will be the test, is how does Luke Montgomery stand up, he or Austin Searveld, and Integra Shabola, the other guard, how do they get after it in the middle of that line? And basically reading the tea leaves and listening to what was coming out of Ryan Day's mouth, he is challenging these guys to get up there and knock people, as he says, rock off the ball, knock people backwards, create movement on the offensive front. And boy, if you can do that, it changes everything for you. And that's why I know fans get all upset about it. I just got upset that they were trying to do it, even though it was obvious they were having a hard time, and there were things to be had in the passing game. But I think in this kind of game, establishing the run is paramount in some form or fashion, is paramount for both of these offenses.
But I think that probably applies a little bit more to Tennessee, but it's not like Ohio State can just abandon the run.
No, but you got to make them respect the fact you will run, is the point.
Here's the thing, Tim, and I go back to this actually quite often as I'm pulling it up because I want to get the exact stats down. Everyone talks about that 2022 Ohio State-Georgia game and how C.J. Stroud was just incredible and Ohio State threw the ball all over the place. They certainly did. Ohio State ran the ball 32 times in that game for 119 yards. They didn't run it effectively or well. But do you know what they did do? They did it enough. And when they did run the ball, they did it creatively. So, I don't mind a rushing attack for Ohio State that sets up the passing attack. I really don't. I mind it when you're doing it and it's not creative enough to gain yards. And that's what we saw too much. In that game, Dallin Hayden, as a true freshman, had 9 carries for 43 yards. He had 4.8 yards a carry. He had a 17-yard run. Xavier Johnson had 6 carries for 28 yards. That was a wide receiver. And they're giving him the ball out of the backfield. And then on one route, or on one play, instead of giving him the ball out of the backfield, they ran him on an RB angle from the NCAA video game, and he scores a touchdown on it because they were creative in the way they use these guys.
Yep.
So I don't mind. Yeah. I don't mind you running the football. You did it against Georgia in the game where you were ultra aggressive. You ran the ball 32 times and you passed it at 34. It's not like they were 70% pass in that game. It's just that they were creative.
But yes, as you remember, they ran out of running backs in that game. That's why Xavier Johnson played some tailback or running back. Right on down the line. And then, of course, Dallin Hayden's the carry. Everybody remembers when they ran the draw play on first down at the Georgia 29-yard line, and he got stoned because they thought he was going to run right past a blitz, but the blitz ended up being right into the hole he tried to attack, or they tried to attack. So, I see where you're coming from. The reason Ohio State was so good in that game too, though, was their quarterback C.J. Stroud ran for the first time a lot, scrambled even more, turned plays into big plays by biding time and buying time and finding a receiver by the name of Marvin Harrison Jr. more often than not. Now, when Marvin Harrison Jr. had to leave the game, Cade Stover, the tight end, was already missing since the middle of the second quarter. It was a totally different Ohio State offense in the fourth quarter, if you remember.
Yeah, and I guess the larger point is just okay, This is who they had as personnel. They found a way to get creative given the personnel they had.
Yeah.
Against Michigan, I saw no creativity given the personnel they have. They know their personnel. They have 3 weeks to prepare. I want them to be creative given the personnel they have. That doesn't.
I would
mean
agree with that.
That doesn't mean Emeka Egbuka has to have 6 carries like Xavier Johnson did, but it does mean that if it's creative way to get Emeka Egbuka the ball, which you haven't done enough in the second half of the season, hand it off to him a couple times. Run routes with him out of the backfield. Do things that put your best players in advantageous matchups. That's all I ask. That and Wendy's saucy nugs, Tim, because you've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's nugs, take the crispy and spicy nugs you love, turn them up to 11.
I like the dip. I'm a dipper.
Well, with the saucy nugs, you can choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, or garlic parm, or the real heat seekers. Brutus Smithers in the comments spewing hot takes about how terrible this Ohio State team is, despite looking like a Ohio State fan. I don't really understand that.
Wow.
Try the spicy ghost pepper on the Wendy's signature spicy nugs. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's and participating U.S. Wendy's. Tim, my Wendy's saucy take of the week. We do this every week. I think Ohio State is going to have 2 70-yard rushers in this game. I think Quinshon Judkins can top 70 yards. I think Will Howard can top 70 yards.
Wow.
How spicy of a take, how saucy of a take is that?
That's ghost pepper spicy. Or spicy ghost pepper. Or spicy ghost pepper.
You think so?
Yeah, Will Howard has got to be dynamic in this game.
Yes.
Like I said, I picked him to be my offensive MVP for Ohio State. He's got to be dynamic in this game, but you gotta deliver. Like I said, a guy that can run around and create more time. That's a godsend. That's how Ohio State came that close to beating Georgia 2 years ago with C.J. Stroud finally grasping that. But you don't want to get too wild with your quarterback, for want of another term. I just keep thinking back to Carson Beck. I think threw for 300 and some odd yards, 326 yards against Tennessee when Georgia beat Tennessee this year. And we've seen Carson Beck hot and cold, right, this season. But I think that's where the big yards are going to be found against this Tennessee offense, weather permitting. And I do think the weather will be permitting. Temperatures could be in the teens, heck, as early as the second quarter. But I do think these players showed, even Jeremiah Smith showed he can catch the ball in the cold. He's from Fort Lauderdale area, South Florida. But you gotta take what they're giving you. And like I've always pointed out about the passing game, I kept saying, the way you beat Alabama, for example, back in the day, throw the ball, because there are fewer Crimson Tide players where you're throwing the ball than there are trying to run it against them. The same way with any other good defense. These are both very good defenses we're going to see on Saturday night, 2 of the nation's elite. But the way you beat them is not necessarily trying to run the ball down their throat. You should try that some, but basically get the matchups you want in the secondary and have your quarterback cool and calm and accurate enough to take advantage of them. I think that's really what this game is going to come down to. I think Ohio State will be zeroed in on Samson. We'll see if they can stop him, but they're definitely going to be zeroed in on him. Are you kidding me? He had almost 1,500 yards rushing this year. Was SEC's best player, so to speak. So the way you get after this team, you got to throw the ball on them. And I think Georgia proved that point. What's also interesting to me, you heard me ask Jim Knowles about this. When you look at video, because you can grow numb looking at too much video. But what Ohio State, I think, is going to Ohio State's defense, and he alluded to this, said, don't you watch the games where the other defense had success? And that would be the second half of Tennessee's loss at Arkansas, the way Arkansas defense got after these guys. And then, of course, Georgia. I think shut them out in the second half. I'm trying to remember. But I would be looking at that, how they got after things, both of those defenses, and Ohio State has, as Jim Knowles said. And, there's just like I'm sure I'm sure Tennessee's looking at Ohio State's second half against Michigan when it scored Zippo. So the way Michigan shut the Ohio State offense down.
Yeah, I mean, there have been Tennessee did not score in the first half against Arkansas. Tennessee did not, there have been multiple first halves where Tennessee has not scored points, like period, in SEC play. And then they were shut out in the second half, like you said, against Georgia. There are stretches of this where Tennessee does not score. Like this season where Tennessee does not score. Not only no field goals, but no points. And Ohio State has been exceptional. I mean, exceptional in the second half of games this year on the defensive side of the football. Except the Oregon game is an exception.
Yeah.
But they gave up fewer points in the second half than they did in the first half. So,
Oregon, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, it's just interesting to me, if Ohio State can build up a halftime lead, obviously, that's important. But, you trust this defense, especially in the third quarter, where I still think it's something outrageous. I think it's a 131-9 this season in the third quarter. Just absolutely bananas, the stats that Ohio State puts up in the third quarter. So, all of that's to say, I guess, Tennessee, if it's a slow start for Tennessee, if it's a slow finish for Tennessee, it won't surprise me because we've seen that from them all year. Whereas Ohio State, if they get off to a slow start, typically this season, even after slow starts, they've performed pretty well. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, but I'm just, I'm looking at the Penn State game. Penn State had a really great drive that drove where Tyler Warren had that great run out of the backfield, their tight end, and got it down to the 2-yard line where Denzel Burke knocked him out of bounds. Denzel Burke doesn't knock him out of bounds. Obviously, it's a touchdown, but my point was they got right down there, and it took a heroic goal line stand by Ohio State and some questionable play calling by Penn State on that goal line stand, but it is what it is, right? No do-overs. And Ohio State then put together a good running drive and ran out the clock. The point was, fourth quarter, Penn State was down there knocking heavily at the door. Against Michigan, Ohio State gave up 2 extended drives to Michigan in the fourth quarter. They got saved by Jack Sawyer's, I think it was Jack Sawyer's interception, right, in the third quarter or fourth quarter, that saved the day when Michigan was throwing into the end zone. And then, of course, they finally gave up the, like I said a while ago, the decent run by Mullings, which helped set up Michigan for its game-winning field goal. Ohio State scored 0 points in the second half against Michigan and got beat basically 3-0 because it was 10-10 at the half. So, it's imperative that Ohio State finish, I guess is what I'm getting to, on Saturday night on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. Red zone execution. The Buckeyes were absolutely nails in the red zone. Had only failed to score points on one red zone trip the entire season following leading up to the Indiana game. And that was the one time they didn't score was when Will Howard fumbled out of the end zone instead of scoring at the 1-yard line.
That's too crazy.
It was remarkable how good Ohio State was in the red zone, no matter who they played. Indiana, they, I think, had 5 red zone trips, scored twice. It was not good. And then Michigan, they had 5 red zone trips, scored twice. Not good enough. Red zone execution. You have to be good in the red zone. And then red zone defense, Ohio State's been fantastic. They had a goal line stand in, I think, 3 straight games at one point this season. Nebraska, Oregon, and Penn State. It was Oregon, Nebraska, Penn State. They had a goal line stand in all three straight games. So, that is one of those things where it's you get down in the red area, score points. You might settle for a field goal, but a field goal is a good thing in this game with these 2 really good defenses. Red zone points are just important, period. And I think red zone execution is going to be a massive factor in this game.
Yeah, well, it always is. And then on top of that, I mean, just like you said, the other thing is take full advantage of any opportunity that comes your way. We saw Ohio State lose a possession against Oregon with a surprise onside kick by Oregon. We saw them lose another possession with a goofy play. we saw Will Howard, and they were coming off their goal line stand against Oregon. They're coming off of their, what was that, third quarter, and they had a great drive going off the 2 or 1 yard line. And then Will Howard mishandled a snap from center on the Oregon end of the field. And I'm trying to remember, I think they settled for a field goal there. I get mixed up, but the point was that was a point. Ohio State chance for them to put their boot on the Ducks' neck and didn't get it done. So, yeah, these are huge games. I'm really looking forward to this game because, like I said, these are teams with great history about them. I mean, Tennessee won the first BCS championship when everybody was included for the first time in the point system. Because, before that, the winner of the Big Ten was still going to the Rose Bowl. The Big Ten and the Pac-12, I don't think, were involved yet in the total BCS package. And then, of course, Ohio State won the first expanded or first college football playoff when it went to 4 teams for the first time in 2014. They both have a chance to make similar history this year with the first expanded 12-team playoff. And you got to know they both want to take full advantage of it. And, from a coaching standpoint, I don't know who has the edge in this because, Ohio State fans are quick to criticize Ryan Day now, not just criticize him, but grease the rails. Some of them for his departure. I think that's far-fetched. And we've heard what Ross Bjork has said about he expects Ryan Day to be his coach in 2025. But a loss here would be quite devastating for Ohio State for one of another term. I mean, it's and would be tough for Ryan Day. Meanwhile, Josh Heupel is kind of playing with house money.
Yeah.
He's got Tennessee back. Tennessee has for a long time not been a fixture at all in the national championship race. I'm talking about at the end of the year. Yeah, during the middle of the year, they've been ranked, a couple of years ago too. But the bottom line is, so Josh Heupel would seem to be the one. And I'm not saying either one of these guys would be this way, but a guy who might be a little more footloose and fancy free in this game to kind of let it all hang out, if you follow my drift. And with Ryan Day, we've all seen it in that Georgia game when they just played free and loose, how close they came to that Holy Grail and that brass ring. And so that'll be what's interesting to watch is when it's 4th and 1 at your own 49-yard line, do you go for it? Who goes for it first? 4th and 1 at your own 49-yard line. That'll be some telltale signs of the mindset of the head coaches involved.
Listen, folks, Tim May is getting ready to go on the Paul Feinbaum show, so he's going to have to run here in a minute. I did want to sneak one more thing in. Ohio State had 2 possessions at Oregon. So Ohio State's played 2 top 5 teams not named Indiana. The Indiana game, Ohio State smothered them. It was a home game. They're 2 top 5 road games, though, against legit top 5 teams.
Yeah.
Ohio State had 2 possessions at Oregon in which it did not score, but it had a chance to go up 2 scores. So it had a chance to go up 2 scores. It had the ball. The first one was a Quinshon Judkins fumble. The second one was a Will Howard. Ball goes off his hands. They have to punt.
Yes.
Okay. That was 2 different times Ohio State had a chance to take a 2-score lead at Oregon. At Penn State, Ohio State went up 14-10 after going down 10-0. They go up 14-10. They had 5 straight possessions with a chance to go up 2 scores. They scored 3 points total on those 5 possessions and only went up 17-10 and then 20-13. So 6 points total. 0 for 5 in going up 2 scores.
Yep.
Ohio State gets up a score and gets the ball with a chance to go up 2 scores. It has to happen. Not a should happen. It has to happen. You can't keep Tennessee in this game. If you get up 7-0 and you force a punt, go up 10-0. Go up 14-0. If you get the ball in the second half and it's 20-13, go up 27-13 and do not look back because Tennessee will make you pay if you don't do that. That's the last thing I've got. I just think that they haven't been good enough at that in key moments of stepping on throats, making sure that teams know, hey, you are buried. They haven't been good at burying teams. They need to do that.
Yeah, but that's because they were playing good teams too.
Yeah, for sure.
Those teams were all fighting to be still undefeated. Boy, what a weird schedule for Ohio State, right? I mean, it's crazy. 3 teams. They won once and they won twice and lost once to 3 teams that are in the college football playoff, including the number 1 team. So crazy. But like you said, the other thing that stood out, like I pointed out against Michigan in the fourth quarter, the defense couldn't get off the field, and on a couple of those drives, and that's part and parcel to it. When you only have 7 plays offensively in any quarter, that means number one, your offense hadn't been very good when it got the ball those 2 times, and then number 2, the other team kept the ball away from you. Yeah. So, if we see a repeat of that on Saturday night, it's going to be interesting when the fourth quarter turns exactly what this game is going to look like.
We'll be there no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Tim May, the 41-year vet on the other side of that screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. We're not even going to talk about the other college football playoff games. We talked about those last week. If you want that, go to Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's from last week. If you want the score picks for this game, I'm not giving them out here. Tim's not giving them out here. Go to Lettermen Row's YouTube channel, bold predictions on Friday morning. They'll be out bright and early for everybody to take in. And then Saturday is the big one. Ohio State, Tennessee, 8 p.m. in the Horseshoe on ABC. We are so excited to get there. It's going to be, again, a supercharged Horseshoe, one way or another. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'm going to start bundling up and getting ready to head over to the Horseshoe already.
Those hand warmers, baby.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get there. We'll see you guys in the Horseshoe on Saturday for Ohio State, Tennessee in the college football playoff.